Psychic experiences, extrasensory perception, intuition, are they real? If so, does everyone have the ability to tap into them? Find out as we take you to the levels of the mind that we're just beginning to understand. The 21st century, the beginning of a new era. We stand at the threshold of a time filled with rapid change, uncertainty, and monumental possibilities. Visionaries have pointed to this time as a turning point for humanity. One such man was the American clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. From holistic healing to spiritual development, the world that Edgar Cayce predicted is now emerging, inviting us to explore the new millennium.
Most of us have had spontaneous experiences of ESP. We're thinking about someone and suddenly the phone rings and it's that very person. We dream about an unfamiliar spot only to find ourselves weeks later in that same place. These and countless other examples of intuition and psychic ability are constant reminders of this little understood capacity of the human mind. We're joined today by Carol Ann Lieros, a professional intuitive who's been helping people develop their own psychic and intuitive skills for over 30 years. Carol Ann, psychic ability seems to suggest that there's far more to us than we've been brought up to believe. What is ESP?
Well, if we look at the five senses, Mark, the seeing and hearing and so on, it appears to be an extension of those senses. For example, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at a man who has a green shirt on and a multiple colored green tie, and anyone in the room can see that if they have vision, if they're not blind. However, in psychic experiences, it has to do with things that are beyond the five senses, we'll call it. In other words, if I was in another room and now describing that I was seeing this man with a green shirt and multiple green tie, that would be more of the psychic experience or the intuitive experience.
Now, you're someone who believes that we all have psychic ability innately. Yes. Well, what is it that blocks it or filters it out?
Well, there are several things, and there's a big list, really. One of them has to do with fear of loss of control, and that seems to be a big one for most people. I think television and movies have given the impression that all of a sudden a psychic experience comes over you and you lose control and you fall on the floor or run into the woods or whatever they portray. And so people have this idea it controls you, when just the opposite is true. We really control it. It's so subtle, it's almost like wispy cigarette smoke, so to speak, that you're trying to get a hold of. What was that impression? What was that thought? What was that feeling that I had? So it's fear of loss of control is one thing, which is an erroneous one. Another one has to do with stress. Most of us live a very stressful life. And psychologists have done tests showing that when we are under stress and very stressed, our sense of taste, smell, our sense of touch is much less keen than when we're more relaxed. So it has to do with stress. Then it has to do with fear. For example, if you were raised in a fundamentalist type of home and you had a psychic experience, your grandmother appeared at the end of your bed after she had died, etc., and your parents, oh, that's the work of the devil, you know, you shouldn't be interested in that, you know, get away from that, you're not going to go to heaven, etc. In a young child, that produces a lot of fear. And as an adult, you're saying intellectually, okay, that doesn't matter, you know, I don't believe that, but it's been programmed in that way. Then another one, of course, has to do with the intellect. The person who was always saying, yes, but I could have known that because. Read all the literature on telepathy, on clairvoyance, on precognition, and then it's like the intellect says, okay, now I know there's fact basis for it. So now I'll allow myself to have the experience.
We all have these abilities. How can we use them in daily life?
You brought up my favorite subject, because my whole interest in the psychic field has to do with the practical application. In other words, tomorrow when you wake up in the morning, how can you use this in your everyday life? And when you think of the dozens of decisions that we have to make all day long, from simple things like what am I going to have for breakfast, to very monumental things like what doctor should I go to for this physical problem I have, what investment should I make for my future, etc. We need our intellect, yes, we need all the data, but also when we combine it with our intuition, then research shows that people who combine the two, or our balanced brain, really, is what they call it, are people who make better decisions about the future. And so it crosses the spectrum of every single decision we make. If we can have data and intuition together, we make better decisions.
And we want those decisions to be coming from the best place within us. Edgar Cayce talked about psychic as of the soul. This is the spiritual side of psychic ability. What does that phrase, psychic as of the soul, mean to you?
Well, what I think of when I hear that phrase, and I really resonate with it, is the fact that we can only know the spiritual dimension with our intuition. We can't know the spiritual dimension with our intellect. We can study about it and intellectually learn about it, but to experience the spiritual dimension, it takes our intuition. Someone once said, I forgot the exact phrase, but something like this: we cannot know God through our intellect. We know God through our intuition.
So whether we have religious beliefs or not, we're all spiritual beings, and then we have innate use of these psychic talents.
Yes.
The evidence is strong that all kinds of psychic senses live within us, that there's a kind of sixth sense, and its expressions are highly varied. These possibilities can be seen by examining the life of someone highly gifted. The American clairvoyant Edgar Cayce, whose skills may be a precursor for what could become commonplace in the new millennium.